Hello and welcome to the first Leyton Orient Clubcast. I'm O's media manager Luke Lambourne, and whilst in lockdown, we'll be speaking to key figures for updates on the O's and perhaps even catch up with some old faces. First up, we're going to be having an in-depth conversation with Teague and Nigel Travis. We'll be talking about all things Orient, coronavirus and its impact on the world, and what they're missing most. It'll be split into two parts, so check back tomorrow for the second episode. Hello, Nigel Travis and Teague joining us from the States this afternoon. First of all, how have you both been keeping?
Well, I'll kick off. I'm back in Boston after being in Florida, where we were on spring break, which got extended. The kids wanted to come home, which is understandable. I think I'm also pleased to be back in Boston myself, because some of the best hospitals in the world if needed. All our friends are here, but we won't be seeing them. I'm doing total social distancing, and I'm hoping we don't actually have to go out the house apart from keeping fit. In terms of keeping fit, what I'm trying to do personally is, if anything should happen and I get it, I think the best thing I can do to prepare is to be as fit as I can. And I've managed to get my weight down. I feel really good. I've worked out more than I've ever worked out in my life. And I think that's all you can do. But otherwise, I'm very good. Thanks for asking, Luke.
Good to hear. Kent, yourself?
We got back from London March the 8th and started the social distancing, self-isolation return to our normal lifestyles. I normally work out of a home office anyway, don't go into an office here in Dallas. So it hasn't been that big of a lifestyle change for me, other than maybe not going and doing certain things, picking up at the cleaners or going to the CVS or things like that. So we've been socially distanced and isolated for the last month, in the sense that it's just kind of the normal way we do things anyway. We're a little bit more cautious about not having people over, not having social interactions, and that sort of thing. We're just sort of living our normal, somewhat normal lifestyle, and staying up to date on email and video chats and that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
So, but all good, but all very good.
That's an interesting thing. I mean, we kind of run the club like this anyway. I mean, we do with Rich, Kent, and I being over here. We spend inordinate amount of time on the phone. So in many ways, this is no different from what we normally do.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is our third hour of being on the phone with people about Leyton Orient Football Club this morning so far. I mean, so not much has changed in that regard for sure.
Yeah, and I guess that leads nicely onto one of my first questions, was that since you both come to the club, it's been a roller coaster of ups and downs, and obviously the current situation's quite a complex one. But having been through what you've been through, did you feel as a board you were quite prepared for it, or I guess more adjusted to be able to make the decisions you have?
I'll go first. I don't think you're ever prepared for a thing like this. As I said to all the employees, including players, because sometimes people think players aren't employees, which they are. Last week, and Luke, you heard it all. I've seen lots of crises in my 50-odd years of working, hurricanes where people lost their homes. So that's a plus. We haven't got that. I think I've seen situations with plane crashes. So that's a bit like hurricanes where you suddenly lose people. So pretty dreadful situations. Then you've got all the financial recessions. But I think in many ways, Leyton Orient Football Club was pretty prepared because of what we went through last summer with Justin's passing, which is, and we all remember it as though it was yesterday. It was absolutely dreadful. You weren't with us at the time, but I'm sure you were at Fylde. The repercussions of what it was like must have been felt, because we felt very close to Fylde.
Absolutely.
After the season last year. And I think we learned from that people are absolutely critical. How you handle people, how long it takes people to get over things, shock to the system. So I think we were probably prepared. I think, as Danny said, seemingly 5 trillion times on various TV and radio shows, we got very experienced board who work well with each other. Nice blend of the UK and the US, and I think we're as prepared as anyone. But you're never prepared enough. And I mean, if you'd asked me 3 weeks ago to predict what would happen for today, I would have got it wrong. And that makes predicting the future very difficult. But all you can do is, as we are, keep talking to people, keep supporting people. Don't forget they have larger families. And I think it's important that you keep talking to people. I reached out over the weekend to some of our players who'd left. And, I think they were slightly surprised, but that's what Leyton Orient's all about. It's about treating people and their families as a number one priority. And we'll keep doing that and working hard at it.
Yeah, and Kent, yourself, I guess the same question to you.
I think the ability to be prepared is a little bit of a challenge in the sense that all of us can prepare for the normal or near normal. But the 1% that happens to all of us in our lives, it is almost impossible to prepare for because the variation of what happens is so large. Take a career ending injury for a player, a heart attack for an executive, the death of a spouse or a child, the passing of a great football manager like Justin, the unfortunate spread of a pandemic infection worldwide, like Nigel mentioned, a hurricane, a tornado. There are so many variations and variables of what could happen and might happen that are disastrous, that to prepare for all of those eventualities is nearly impossible. I don't know anyone who's ever been able to do it. So for us at the football club, it's not about us preparing for the 1%. We spend a lot of our time focusing on how to best respond or react to the 1%. We prepare for the 99%, but then we think about very carefully what's the best way for us to respond or react to the 1%. That's how I think through it myself.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess one of those reactions was seen in the decision that was made public on Friday when the announcement came that Leyton Orient staff were put on furlough leave. Nigel, if we start with you, can you tell us about what exactly it means to furlough staff and the kind of decision-making process behind it?
Yeah, it's a funny story. 3 weeks ago, we were talking about what should happen in the UK, and I think it was one of our internal meetings. I said, well, in the US, they have this concept called furlough, which is a temporary leave of absence, so to speak. And to give a US context, if the government doesn't have money because they haven't passed a bill in Congress to fund the government, they go on furlough. If a steelworks doesn't have raw material, they go on furlough. And it's a concept that doesn't really exist in the UK. So I actually wrote a note to Rick Parry, who's the chairman of the EFL, saying this would be a useful concept. And I was absolutely shocked when 3 days later the Chancellor mentioned furlough in his statement. And by the way, just to be clear, I don't think my note had anything to do with the decision. So I don't want anyone to think that I'm claiming any credit, because I'm not. I just think it was funny and ironic that it should happen. So basically what it means is you get 80% of the wages for people who are not working up to a limit. And I think we spent all of last week trying to decide what to do. I mean, in any situation like this, companies, and it's the same the world over, are going through not forecasts, they're going through when they will run out of cash. And I think if business doesn't return, that all businesses, no matter who they are, airlines, football clubs, restaurants, will run out of cash. So the definition and the question to ask is when you run out of cash. And we've looked at our liquidity like every other organization all the time. We saw the furlough opportunity as this limited layoff, effectively, limited period of absence as an opportunity, because we do have a lot of people who are not doing their normal work. We felt it was important to follow the law. So, Luke, I think you're one of those not furloughed, right?
Yeah, that's right.
So, because we knew we had to maintain our face to our customers who are our fans and to do things like this podcast. So, just to be clear to everyone, Luke's not furloughed. He's working as normal, except he's working from home, total social distancing. So, we felt that this was something that was there for businesses. We're a business, and we took advantage of it. And we did that in the context of the fact that we have had help from the EFL, but we're very grateful for that. But all it does is loan us money we would have got in the future. So it moves the bubble down the road. So the furlough is designed to give temporary comfort to businesses. We thought it was the right thing to do. We've talked to players, staff about salary reductions, salary deferrals. And one of the things we learned and listened was that people want some kind of certainty, albeit for a short time. So effectively what we've done is we're taking the furlough money for those it applies to, but for all people at the club, they're going to be fully paid for the next 2 months, which means March retrospectively and April looking forward. And then we'll make another decision at the end of the month about the next month. And I think it's important that we really take on board that message that people need a little bit of certainty, because no one knows what's going to happen when the season comes back, if it comes back, etc., which I'm sure we'll talk about later. So that was the thinking behind the decision. But to be honest, we may be slow, but we were extremely considered in making that decision.
Yeah, and Kent, I guess over to you if you had anything to add on that subject.
Yeah, let me just say this. What is Leighton Orient Football Club? Leighton Orient Football Club is a content creator. It is a entertainment business. It is an event management company. At its core, at its business core, that's what it is. And what's happening globally in all governments worldwide is they're all trying to figure out what is the best cultural, financial response they can have to the amount of unemployment that the policies of the current governments, that is social distancing and self-isolation, those are causing unemployment globally, worldwide, quickly. And so the government of the United Kingdom came up with a scheme called a furlough. And basically, we as a business, we're a business that is taking advantage of a government program that we need to take advantage of because the policies of the government and of the world, for all the right reasons, are causing us to have zero revenue for an undetermined amount of time. No revenue. We have no revenue coming into the club. So for us to take advantage of a governmental scheme that's set up specifically for businesses like us who have been severely impacted by the policies and the situation, I think that's the best decision that we can make. And our employees and our players and all of the people that work for, in, and around the club, I think they all understand that this is a very unique spot in time. And if we had a different way of approaching it or a different way of solving this challenge, other than placing on furlough, we definitely would have done that. But this was the best choice that we had the best choice that we could make given the choices we were given in the situation that we're in.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll stay with you on this one, Kent, as we go on to season tickets now, which is something that was probably launched relatively early and obviously during a time of, I guess, lower cash flow for the club and reasons like that. So do you want to tell us a bit about, why the season tickets were kind of promoted and launched during this time and also how it's gone so far?
Well, the season tickets that we have a calendar that we follow at Leyton Orient Football Club that's on a normalized set schedule. And sometimes things get launched and they happen on that normalized schedule within a varying range. Um, I think the reason that we launched the season tickets were for two things. Number one, I think it was really important that our fans understand that we have hope for the future, that we believe that we will need season tickets in the future for a future season.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's really important that our fans understand and that people who love football understand that we have great hope that we will be playing this season and future seasons as soon as possible. And so I think that's the reason. I think that's really the primary reason why we did it. The secondary reason is that it's a scheduling thing. I think it's important for us to make commitments to the fans and make commitments to the business and people to know what kind of commitments we're making. So I think those are the two main reasons why. Nigel, you probably know much better than I do what the uptake has been or how people have responded to the request for season tickets.
Yeah, I think I'd say that the response has been good considering the situation. I mean, we haven't finished this year. No one knows if and when we're going to finish this year. So I'd say it's good. We appreciate the loyalty and support of our fans. I'd say that towards the goal, we're probably about just under 10% of where we need to get for what would be a normal season ticket number. And we understand that some fans have got the uncertainty that we described earlier, so they can't sign up right now. But no one's going to lose out. That's the key thing. I mean, I talked to Danny about this morning because it's an important thing. Everyone's got circumstances that they didn't expect weeks ago, so we've got to make sure that people don't lose out. But there are also people out there who appreciate that you and I and others are doing whatever they can to finance the club. I had a very good meeting last week with Loft, and it was very clear that everyone in Loft understands that we are funding the club because we love the club, and we're doing our bit. And other people may not be in the same situation as us to fund the club, but they want to do their bit. So buying season ticket is one thing they can do. But tomorrow, depending on when this goes out, so it'd be Tuesday the 7th, Danny said we're going to launch a mega sale of everything in the shop because that brings in cash. So I know it's a very trite and well-used phrase at the moment, but cash is king. That's the same for your personal finances, the same for all businesses, same for Leyton Orient Football Club. So if fans want to contribute, we'd ask them to make sure that they are thinking about buying the season tickets and also making sure that they look at could they buy something, because remember it's Easter this weekend and maybe a good Easter gift to someone in their family.
Absolutely. You mentioned there obviously the uncertainty kind of ongoing at the moment, and we heard from the EFL on Friday that football is going to continue to be postponed until it's safe to resume. So they didn't give a date this time round, which I think the last two announcements they did. So they're clearly not expecting things to come back, on any kind of quick or exact basis. So the question to you, Nigel, again is what kind of implications will this have for Leyton Orient, but also the wider footballing world?
Oh God, I think this could be a question that takes Kent and I the rest of the podcast to answer. Okay, so let me start slightly broader. and say a few positives. Firstly, this is a great game we have, and we're privileged to be involved in it. And as I think everyone knows, I love Leighton Orient Football Club to death, and I've supported the club for just about 60 years, and so that's of first importance. I had the pleasure of seeing us go up to the top league. I may not have seen as many games in recent years because I lived in America as I would have wanted, but Leighton Orient is first and foremost our priority. Football is also important, and the way that football is run in terms of the finances is ridiculous, and it needs to change. And if fans want something to do while they're off and got nothing to watch, I'd encourage them to watch Sunderland Till I Die, which I think is very instructive about football. I'm halfway through the second series. But more importantly, I'd encourage them to listen to a podcast called The Price of Football that features the very well-known football finance expert Kieran Maguire. And I've learned a lot from it, and I'd encourage our fans to listen. So, as per the discussion we had at the club a couple of months ago, football finances need to get fixed. So, I think there's two issues here: how you deal with the coronavirus, but it's highlighting at the same time that football finances need to get fixed. Kent was the first one at our club that ever talked about sustainability, and he did it very clearly and has focused our mind. So we're very focused on becoming a sustainable club, because the thing I love as a fan, I want to continue until well after I'm not around. So that is important. What the coronavirus is doing is making clubs come together. And I can tell you, we have a WhatsApp group of chairmen and CEOs. We've had a league meeting last week at League Two clubs, which was a very pleasurable experience, actually. Did it on Microsoft Teams. It worked extremely well. Rick Parry is doing an absolutely awesome job as the chairman. He's acting as chairman and CEO at the same time. The new CEO, who is the current CEO of Burnley, doesn't come until June. He's going to make change happen, but he's tackling the two jobs: what we do about coronavirus, and then what we do about football finance in general. And a lot of changes I'm predicting will come out, and they will be good. I can't predict, because everyone wants me to say what's going to happen, what's going on between the PFA, the Professional Footballers Association, the Premier League, the EFL, etc. I can't predict what's going to happen. I'm sure they're having very detailed discussions about everything we read about in the press, about pay cuts, deferrals, contracts at the end of June when the contracts are up, and the future. I'm sure they are very good discussions. For those who criticise the PFA, I want to say, and I've said it before, they've got a job to do. They've got 4,000 members, and their job is to protect the interests of their members. Yeah, they have to take wider society into account, but their first and foremost job is to make sure that they protect their members. I'm sure, knowing Rick, he will make sure that the discussions are proactive, positive, and will improve football overall. When it's going to come back, who knows? I mean, I've heard every combination. I personally, so this is a personal view, think it is unlikely to happen before June. It's probably going to be July. We finish this season, and next season will get deferred somehow. So that's a few things we think about. And then the leagues have also got to sort out what they're going to do about promotion and relegation from the National League, etc., etc. So there's a lot going on. And then you've got a calendar which, it's easy for us, a little bit removed in America, to say, well, if we start later, do we finish later? The big problem, you've got the Euros now placed in June next year, and that has ramifications right down the pyramid. So a lot going on, but I've got great confidence in the leadership, the current leadership of the EFL, to resolve the problems in the best interest of football, and I think that is also in the best interest of Leighton Orient. Sorry for the long speech.
Not at all. Kent, to bring you back in here. Obviously, Nigel there has spoken a lot about Leighton Orient and the EFL, but in terms of the wider football or indeed sporting world? Is there any kind of implications that you could maybe see happening in the kind of near to maybe long-term future as a result of this?
Yeah, I guess the thing that I would try to help other people do and understand is that Leighton Orient Football Club exists in the context of League Two. And we are a part of a competition with 23 other clubs just in League Two. League Two exists inside of a context of the English Football League, which has 71 members currently. And so all of those 23 and then 71 clubs must be considered, including a championship. And the championship clubs are very interested in the situation in what's known as the Premier League, which I think we've all heard of. And the Premier League exists with 20 clubs that is also in a broader context called the European group, right? And the European group then affects Serie A, Ligue A in France, the Bundesliga, and a number of other clubs. What I'm saying is that Leighton Orient Football Club exists in a worldwide context like the Euros and the World Cup and the Olympics. And because we exist in that much larger context, there are decisions that are being made by people globally that impact us. And I've only talked about football so far. I haven't talked about the virus. I haven't talked about the response. I haven't talked about the governments. I haven't talked about travel. I haven't talked about the fans. I haven't talked about the coaches, the players, the staffs. There are so many moving parts to this global game that we all love so much. And there are so many knock on effects and unintended consequences of certain decisions that really we're just going to have to wait and see when we can, from a society perspective, resume the process of assembly. Restaurants want to know when it's going to happen. Concert promoters want to know when it's going to happen. Almost every entertainment venue wants to know when it's going to happen. So we're working through this and going through this together as a world. And there is a world context that needs to be considered along with just how it impacts or what we're going to do at Leighton Orient Football Club. What that means is I have no idea how it's going to work, when it's going to work. My process is not about trying to predict it. It's just about being ready to respond or react to whatever comes along.
So that's it for part one of the Clubcast. We'll check back tomorrow for the second part, where we talk to Kent and Nigel a bit more about all things Leighton Orient, as well as their message for the O supporters.